Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here to talk about visual revenue. We've been using it for just under a year now. I think we started doing the metering last October. I got to the start at the beginning of September, and I had some big challenges ahead of me. They had not had a digital leader in the newsroom for many months. And when I got there, basically, my boss told me that we needed to try and do three things. One, we had to do a successful redesign of the site, which was sorely needed. This is an image of what the homepage used to look like. If you guys want to go to our website now, it's kansascity.com, those of you who are on your computer. It had not been redesigned in several years, and it sorely needed it, and I think it's one of the deepest websites I've ever seen. It just goes on and on and on and on. So this was our website. Content was put in separated modules by topics down a very deep page. We had very little ability to highlight more than one big story at the top of the page, which was really difficult on days when we had several stories that we wanted to highlight. And on days when traffic was really lagging, before I got there, the editors were in the routine of just parking photo galleries at the top, especially community faces photo galleries or party pictures, to drive traffic, which, as most people who worked on websites know, can mean a lot of what we call empty clicks. So, and that's worthy of a whole nother discussion, photo galleries on websites and whether those metrics are valuable or not. But what we wanted to do with the website and changing it, and the reason I'm talking about the design is I think it's very key to having visual revenue this year, is give readers a much, much better user experience. I actually think now that I look back on this, that this might be considered an enemy of the brain design because there's just so much, and there's so many different colors and too many fonts, and oh my goodness. So I put my glasses on, sorry. We redesigned the site, and we knew we were also going to have a paywall starting last December. Our paywall started on December 5th. So knowing that we had a paywall starting and we're going to do a major site redesign, we were very grateful to have our publisher contract for us to have visual revenue, because we were afraid of so much change going into both of those things at the end of the year and what that would mean for our page views. Already when I got there, our page views monthly were lagging. In one case, they had hit close to a 30 million mark per month, and that's pretty low for us. We're averaging now more about 35 to 37 million page views each month. Our page views are actually I think we're up 28 million page views year to date so far this year. So, and I think I can credit visual revenue for a big part of that. But having them behind us and being able to really see in real time some of the decisions that we had made about the website was really, really important to us. In our site redesign, you can see that we quieted everything down. We kept what we call our latest news list, which was our breaking news list, before we increased the number of positions on that, because in the small period of the metering that we did on the old website between October and our new homepage debuting right at the beginning of February, we could tell that list was a really hot list all the time. And so I had the person who was redesigning the site increase the number. So I think visual revenue was helpful in helping us decide what we were going to do with the site, because prior to that, we had a whole team of people who had many, many years of journalism experience. Most of the people on my team transitioned from print to web, and we all came from different backgrounds. We came from copy editor backgrounds, page one editor backgrounds, feature editor backgrounds, people with leadership skills. And we came in with, I think, very, very strong news decision abilities, but we still weren't sure that some of the decisions we were making about the website and how we were changing it were going to be spot on. So I think visual revenue has really helped us that way. And we had a lot of conversations with them as we were going through this process. So we decided to create a main four module spot on the left, with our rich media modules in the middle, with our galleries and videos. And then down here, we decided to do what we call an editor's picks, which is a mix and aggregation of content from across the website instead of dividing it by categories. And I think this was the thing we had the biggest questions about going into the redesign, was whether this would be successful or not. And I think visual revenue is really valuable in having that and telling us whether it really worked or not. And I think it has. The one thing that we're still iffy about, and I think we're actually going to change, is this area at the bottom. And I'm going to show you visual revenue minutes so you can see what the metering looks like. But we think that what we did at the bottom, which is a feed from different sections, has not been as successful as what it could be. So we're going to do something about the bottom of the homepage. So that's our new homepage. So the way we use visual revenue, and we also use Omniture, is our web editors, and me in particular. I get up every morning, and I'm up between like 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. usually. And the first thing I do is I get on and I look at Omniture for like the broader view, to look at what our numbers are for that day, knowing that we have to try and beat the year-over-year numbers. And I'm showing you our real numbers for today, and you can see that we're actually lagging today, and it's been a really slow news period. And I was kind of disappointed because I was hoping that we had some big news this week so you could see numbers that are a little bit better than what they are. But this is the reality of working in newsrooms when it's really slow. We're doing everything we can. We've been very aggressive with visual revenue this week and testing headlines and switching content out more rapidly just to try and get our numbers up. So if you look at the pink number, the pink bar, that's the number that we're trying to beat each day. My goal is, in running the website, is to meet or beat our numbers, our page views from a year ago. So if you look at down at the bottom, we're sitting at, we're trying to beat 37,219,000, and we know that from a year ago, 1.5 million page views are counted against us from an error in code in a Google ad that went to a 404 error. So it was just like recycling and reserving. So when I do my monthly report, I'm going to try and subtract that 1.5 million page views. So it actually wasn't 37 million. So we actually might meet or beat a little bit this month what our page views are. But that's how I use Omniture, and I use it to also track how we're doing for projections for the rest of the day. But once I look at that, then I go into visual revenue, and I'm going to be looking at, early in the morning, I look at what the web editors who work until, and we have web editors who work from 6 a.m. until about 1:30 or 2 in the morning. And then I look to see what changes they've made overnight. And then I look to see on the front page how things are doing. And it looks like I'm actually happy to see we have some things in the green right now, because an hour ago everything was in the yellow. So if it's in the green, it's overperforming its position. If it's in the yellow, it's meeting the expectations. And if it's in the red, then it's underperforming. And those are the areas where we will go in, and I will have the web editors like either move something out of that position or do a headline test or say, boy, that's, and we have to watch it for a while too. We usually let it sit there for half an hour, because it could be in red. The one where it says Selig will retire, that could be there, that could be in the red only because it's only been there for 10 minutes or so. I know that news was tweeted out, or I got a text alert about an hour and a half ago on that, but that story might have just landed there just recently. But we can go in and we can look at it in the 5-minute view. I'm sorry, I think I was in the 5-minute view. Look in the hour view. You can see it remetering itself. So I'm actually happy that at this time of day on a Thursday afternoon, we're just above, if you look at the yellow bar at the left, we're just above where we should be at this time. On really hot news days, when the Jovan Belcher murder-suicide last December, the JJ's blast and fire last February, our big snowstorms, when we had big news like that, you can easily see us being way, way in the green. And, of course, we love it when it goes into the green. But this is so valuable to us now that we're constantly in this. I think the web editors and myself, we're in this every few minutes. And I was telling Dennis that I've almost become addicted to this tool, that on the days when they're doing maintenance on the tool and we can't get in and see it, I almost feel like, oh my God, visual revenue's down. I can't see it. I can't see what people are clicking on. I've just become so addicted to looking at what people are interested in real time. I just, it's amazing. And so here, I'll show you what the recommendations look like. So, okay, so this is actually a really good example. Halloween Horror, the Kentucky teen, saying that we should put that in breaking news number 2. Now, that story's been out there, you can see, for 16 hours. And I'm not sure that we would actually take that recommendation. So let's see, it would give us 331 more clicks. That's sort of a maybe for us, only because it's been out there for a long time and it's been sitting out on the homepage in other positions. So I always look at the value up at the top left, the total value. And as we've become more used to the tool, that value has dropped because I think we've become better at using the tool. And we've tried to anticipate some of the moves and that visual revenue would already suggest to us. And so we found that usually the incremental views, the content views, recommendation views are usually like around this number or much lower. Whereas when we first started, they were pretty high, and we would take a lot of those recommendations. So here's another one. We have a columnist who's really good at sort of finding these quirky stories online. So we could accept this, and I could have Keith move that into the number 3 position because that's a fairly new story. It's only been out there for an hour and 44 minutes. So that's one that we could take and put into that position. And one thing that some of Dennis's folks have taught us that on some of the hot stories that we know that are trending really high, if we go in and add assets to those stories, either other stories or photo galleries, we have the ability to up our page views if we're really smart about looking at the stories that are trending really high and then adding more content to those stories for more engagement. So I spend a lot of time in the content view and look to see what's getting picked up, and it's really also valuable to see where it's coming from. And we're really happy when aggregators are picking up our content, and when Drudge picks up one of our stories, you can see those views going up to 12,000, like 28,000. We were really lucky last month that Drudge picked up our rodeo clown content. That got huge numbers. I think that gave us total 2.5 million page views last month. That story just kind of fell in our lap. And we call those our home runs of the month, but day in and day out, it's what we call the singles that we have to, rely on and count on for building our traffic, building our brand, and driving traffic. And I think when we see the recommendations, I have to sit and think about our long-term strategy and how we're trying to build our brand as the best news source in Kansas City. So I don't always want to put what I would consider a fluffy story by Lisa Gutierrez on, like the Walmart costumes being pulled off the website. I would consider not putting that into our number 1 position because I think that always needs to remain a very strong journalistic story of some kind. We will sometimes put our own staffers' photo galleries there if they're off a news event, but we have gone away from the strategies of pushing photo galleries up to the top, to get our click rate up, just because I want to really push the journalism brand of the Star and the great content that we do. So I think visual revenue has also busted some myths and assumptions about what we do with content on the website. When we're looking in this content view and I see stories that are still trending really high from maybe last night, yesterday afternoon, we will bring them back to the homepage. And I think that before we had this tool, there was a general assumption that if the content had been out there all day yesterday, we would not bring it back today. Why would we bring it back? People had already seen it. Well, as our audiences are more fractured and harder to track, we know that there are people who aren't coming to the site every day, because I get weird feedback messages from people saying, "Ooh, you didn't tell me that you were going to do this." And we said, "Oh, we had something on the homepage for a week and you didn't see it." So I think there are new ways to bring content back, and often we'll change the headlines to freshen that content up and still get residual traffic off of those stories. So that's been very helpful to us as well. The social is fairly new for us, and we were talking to Jeff the other day about this. We've got both of our Twitter and our Facebook accounts hooked up here. Right now you're looking at our Twitter. Well, here's Facebook. Our social's kind of slow today. Usually, like all day yesterday, it was in the green. Today, it's in the red. Let's see how Twitter's doing. Twitter's doing a little bit better. We have the ability on the front. I'll go back to the site. We can park stories in the latest news list, and anything we park in there generates an automatic tweet, which is really helpful to the web editors because we don't have one person dedicated to social media. And we have a little trick that we do, and if we park it in position 20, which you can't see on the home page, it still can generate a tweet. And so when we do that, I'll do that just to get the tweet out there to see if it engages people, and then I'll go back to visual revenue to see how it's getting picked up. If it is getting picked up, then I'll make the decision then to put it back onto the home page. So that's another specific example where visual revenue is helping us when we're kind of on the fence about our content. The other thing that's really interesting when you go into the content view is often because of our search engines and aggregators picking up our content that's automatically posted to the site through some of our wire feeds, they'll get picked up, and there's interest in stories, quirky national stories or international stories that we wouldn't have thought, based on our own years of news judgment, were that interesting, or that we thought a Kansas City audience would be interested in because it wasn't local. And so this helps us find things that we wouldn't have thought about putting on the homepage. I don't know if there's one right now. New York State shifts judicial approach to prostitution. Well, who would have thought that an audience would have been interested in that? But it's probably not our audience. It's probably unique visitors who are finding that through an aggregator. But sometimes that will help us decide, well, maybe we should think about putting that on the home page if there's that much interest in it nationally. So that's how we use the content view. It's been very helpful to see where it's coming from. One thing that's new that we're excited about is the ability to look at our content through this device button. And because we're a responsive site, which means that our content reshapes and resizes itself depending on the size of your mobile screen, we're able to track our views that way. You can look at our Kansas City content on mobile in a variety of ways, but this is only tracking it in the responsive view on mobile devices or on the desktop. It's not tracking, we have two different iOS or tablet apps, iOS tablet apps. We have an iOS and an Android phone app. In our IMP site, those are not being metered through this. But let's see what else I can tell you. Did I miss anything? Dennis explaining what it does?
3.5 hours of additional information, but I think this was splendid.
Yeah, I told Keith, who's the deputy online editor, I said, do a lot of head tests. So you could see, he went wild with the head test. So you can see that he's done one on the Royals. He did one on Bud Selig retiring. He did one on Cory Booker. And so you can see, I don't know, I hope I'm not in the way. You can see, can you guys see in real time how the numbers are doing? So I'm excited. Maybe because he did all these head tests, Dennis, we're in the green now.
Jokes aside, I think that's exactly why you're in the green.
Yeah.
Advertising off.
Yep. So we have a Royals column, we have Obama, we have Andrew Wiggins I knew that a story like that would probably do really well on the front because there's the teen who hung himself. And we've got some more, our sports content always does really well. So
if you go back to the platform, just as a closing remark, given that you just redesigned, what I think is interesting here, if you notice, which you might not have noticed, so these are actually sorted on the value of the individual positions. And I think most people will have this idea that, the more the space, the bigger the picture, the more up and to the left it is, the more valuable it is, and the more time and energy and seriousness I should apply to it. Look at this. The most valuable piece of real estate on the Kansas City Star is Breaking News 1. Breaking News 2, 3, 4, 5. The majority of the traffic into stories of that homepage, which, by the way, drives half of all the article views, which you saw from the other report, comes off a really rather unsexy list of links with a timestamp above it. That means I don't need any gory pictures or what have you. That little list in the middle of the page is a heavy driver. And I think that's beautiful. It just shows that we don't have to add the attitude of Gawker to everything, but we can actually just do something as sober as this. That makes me sleep well.
Well,
So
we've been really happy with it. Our local DMA numbers are up almost 14% this year. That was one of our goals that we had to meet. In fact, I think we're leading the company, McClatchy, in that. Our page views are up 11%. Our uniques, I think, Mark Whitaker, who's here from the Star, we were looking at our uniques right before lunch, and we're tracking even with last year in our uniques, which, given the fact that we have a paywall, I think is really remarkable, because the paywall was, sort of a big hit against our uniques this year, and we're really worried about that. The way our paywall works is, for people, it's an opt-out subscription metered paywall, and so if you're not a subscriber, you get 15 page views a month on the desktop, you get 60 on the iPhone, you get 20 on the iPad and on Android. And we're probably going to be taking those numbers down. But and some of our content is not behind the paywall. Photo galleries are not behind the paywall. Inc. magazine, which is similar to Vox magazine here, is not behind the paywall because of a competitor in Kansas City. Any of our service pages are not behind the paywall. So there are certain things that are exempt. Our obits are not behind the paywall. But you probably will see the meter start to tighten up. But we know that we've lost a lot of people because of the paywall, because I get all of the angry emails from people and feedback. But we are so focused on giving people a good user experience. Every day that I come in, I am focused on that. It's like people are paying for this digital content. We have to make the user experience every day the very best that we can. And we're continually upgrading the site to do that. We just added 2 new community sections this week. We're going to be completely redoing our calendar information, our calendar vendor on the site. We're rebuilding a lot of sections, subsections that were in Django. They're going to be built into our new CMS that's coming in February. So we're about halfway through what I call the refresh and remake of kansascity.com. So by the end of next year, everything really should be done. And I just think that that's my number one goal every day, is to make it the best that can be. And for some of the other speakers who talked about the value of other content on the site besides content that's relevant to Kansas City, I think we've seen a big growth in people interested in stories outside of our region, outside of our city and our region, because they're interested in that kind of content. But when they get there, we do give them a lot of other content too that's easy to find and easy to read. And I should talk about our navigation. One thing we did is we have a drop-down navigation now. And so this allowed us to take a lot of that content, those content modules, off the site, because everything that's in our site can be found in this drop-down. So that's where some of that content went. I don't want to talk too long.
I think we took
Cool, thank you.
every single minute of the 45 that you
Questions?
gave us.
No, thank you guys for your
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
talk.